Amusement park employees of Reddit, what is your horror story? You/deleted responded. I operated a few different roller coasters during my fun-filled summers at this amusement park, but most of my horror stories come from one ride in particular. The train was one of the ones that you had to step into, with a lap bar restraint. On one particular day, it was over 100*F, and the ride had been running as usual for most of the morning. As we were loading the train, a guest came up to me to say that there was an awful smell coming from the front car, and my stomach immediately dropped. Usually with these types of complaints, we'd find that the previous rider had one too many slushies before riding and had lost their lunch. Gross, but we were used to cleaning that kind of stuff. One started approaching the front car, and immediately called for my co-worker to direct everyone out of the train and back into the line, and to call our supervisor to close the ride. Instead of a normal puke situation, I found a greenish-brown liquid spread all throughout the front car, from the seat down to the floor. Whoever was the last person to ride the ride had shed all over themselves and hadn't bothered to tell Anvone about it. Cleaning human feces is one thing, it's absolutely disgusting, but it can be done. But trying to clean up human diarrhea in 100+ degree weather, off of the floor of a car where you had to kneel down and stick your head into the car to reach the very front, is a situation that I never would have imagined even in my worst nightmares. The ride was down for the rest of the day, and it took over an hour to clean everything out of the car before we could start really sanitizing it. You/albino panda bear responded. Worked at a water park. Witnessed a man at the wave pool that would pull down his trousers and rub his junk up against little kids that were isolated from their parents. It was absolutely horrific and disgusting to witness. Of course I had to report it to security, and thankfully, they had a camera at the front of the pool, allowed for more evidence than just he said, she said testimony. Had to go to court to testify. They actually admitted to it at the end of it all, which I don't know if that sickens me even more. Needless to say, I'm glad I did the right thing and reported it, because anyone could have easily just missed it or even ignored it. Edit. I have the article of the event, not entirely sure if posting it is ethical since it gives the water park's name and the guy's name. You/Wired89 responded. I was working security at a theme park when I was 18. One evening one of the roller coasters that was stopped in the station got rear-ended by another. There were some injuries, nothing severe thankfully. I did however end up staying up all night, after the park had closed, sitting on the coaster to ensure no looky-loos or news media tried to get access to the cars. It was dark. Creepy. I was 18 in a closed, deserted amusement park. You/Fresh Account 7368 responded. Lifeguarding at this lazy river tube pool, basically just tell kids to get back in their tubes all day. These two guys like 30 years older arguing in Polish, or something, floating all around the lazy river. They are on lap 2 or 3 of arguing and really going at it. One of them pulls a knife out of his trunks and stabs the other guy's tube. He walked around to the end with his popped tube, while guy with the knife proceeds to just hop all the different fences to get outside the park and is not seen again. You/Tollhouser responded. Many moons ago, I was assistant director of training security at a park known for its cartoon mice. While doing the walk around the park with a group of new hires, I got a call about a possible indecent exposure incident at Fantasyland. Knowing that was the most popular place for children in the park, so much more than Toontown, I rushed the new hires through the backstage area to cut travel time. While we were backstage behind the Small World ride, one of my trainees pointed out someone dropping their pants and leaning against the building. Before we had a chance to close the distance between us and the guy, a blast of brownish-yellow liquid exploded outwards in a fan pattern. I stopped the group, got on the radio, and informed them of the bio incident, then slowly made my way to the guy. When I was about 10 feet from him, he looked up, smiled, then blasted the wall again. Without a word, he pulled up his pants and started to walk away. His pants were soaked with liquid shit and piss. Before he was able to leave the area, Anaheim police apprehended him. After questioning him, they called for an ambulance. Upon talking with the police sergeant, found out he was a well-known homeless man in neighboring city of Orange, usually picked up for swinging his dick at traffic. The kicker though was, he wasn't the subject of the initial call. When we finally got to Fantasyland, we found out that someone was complaining about a woman breastfeeding. 3.5 years of working there, and that is one of the events that still feels fresh in my mind. I am a litlapage responded. I once had to height check a girl who was both mentally and physically disabled. This is just as they are about to get on the ride too, as someone else previously didn't bother to check her height to begin with. So I politely ask her and her carer to come and check her height after lots of no, and as luck would have it, she wasn't tall enough, of course. She didn't take it well and started screaming saying she's going to ride no matter what. And after leaving to let the carer tell her to get out, she finally left her seat after about 10 minutes, which is an eternity in rollercoaster time. I see her walking off. I mean, yeah, it sucks, but I'm just doing my job. I'm just relieved that she's finally going. But then as she's walking through the exit, she turns around and screams, "I hope you die." So that was nice. It was hilarious, but still soul-crushing at the same time. Also, it was my birthday. I quit not long after. U/KDog0073 responded. A huge storm was coming. I was operating the railroad at the time. Unfortunately, we left the station right before they were able to call us to close the ride. So as we are on our way, suddenly there was a huge downpour. Upon arriving at the station, we were immediately directed to an employee shelter. Now this is where even more of the interesting stuff happened. 1. People were stranded at the station away from the entrance, wanting to ride back. I had specifically warned that the ride can close at any time before people boarded. 2. We were told that we cannot suggest any shelter because that would make the park responsible. 3. A baby in a stroller was abandoned in the storm near the kid area. U/Witch9 responded. Worked for an amusement park several summers as a teenager, and a haunted house at one, off and on. Neither park I worked at was a dry park, so drunk parents ranked among the worst. The haunted house was particularly fun, as later groups tended to involve drunks. I took a bad kick to the ribs once, while working under an overhang, and we had at least one violent incident a night. For further perspective, most of us were high schoolers and not all that intimidating. For the actual amusement park, the most fucked up thing was when I got sent home early once for a bit of weather coming, which wasn't that odd. Said I should have time to get home, though. I lived a half hour away. What I didn't know was I got sent home in a tornado warning. The warning was posted when they sent me home. They knew the line of storms was about to hit. I ended up pulling over after a tree branch hit my car, and got stuck in a hailstorm. The roof of my car was dented. No tornado actually touched down, but we had bad straight-line winds. A few other employees were also told to go home, and had pretty similar stories of trying to. The woman working the office that day just decided, on her own, would be better off going home than staying in the fairly solid, permanent buildings on the premises. AKA, once we were gone, not her problem. U/Mr. 2-1782 man responded. I worked at a water park when I was in high school, not the sort of amusement park most people think of, but still an amusement park. The park had lots of large pools with a shallow section and a deep section, separated by rope. For some reason parents thought that their kids splashing around in the shallow end qualified them to swim in the deep end. When you're a lifeguard, you're supposed to scan the pool every 30 seconds to check on everyone. 30 seconds is a long fucking time. On more than one occasion a kid would wander over into the deep end. They would be okay for a few seconds, but would panic and start drowning. Unlike what you see in the movies, someone drowning is a fast, silent affair. Splashing is the exception, not the rule. Usually it didn't take too long to spot someone drowning. The problem was that when a guard blew the whistle and jumped in the water, people would start flailing like chickens with their heads cut off. Unless the pool was nearly empty, this significantly slowed things down. And then there's the people that tried to help. Unless you're a qualified guard, stay out of the way. On more than one occasion, kids got pulled from the water pretty damn near death. Giving a kid CPR is not a pretty sight. One kid did die during the time I worked there. Thankfully it was on a day off. U/Anita Bell responded. Not really a horror story, but it was scary to me. I worked at a children's amusement park, and they had me operating the Ferris wheel, which is a rough ride to operate. You have to balance it and put people on of similar weights on opposite cars, so it's a lot of stopping and loading before letting it go around a few times. As you can imagine, it's difficult for a teenager to explain to an overweight couple why they can't get on the ride when the only other person on the ride is a skinny kid. I was supposed to only be on the ride for 2 hours. They left me there for 4 hours in direct sunlight with no breaks. After 4 hours on a busy day with no water and no break, and getting sick of having fat people yell at me for not being able to get on immediately, I lost track of whether it was balanced. I wound up making it go backwards and people freaked the fuck out. That's happened before, but I was usually able to stop it before it went all the way around. Not this time. I physically didn't have the strength. Luckily the owner was around and stopped it. People were pissed. When my supervisor came to see what happened, I said, "That's what happens when you leave someone on this ride for 4 hours." No idea how I didn't get fired. No one was hurt, but they sure as fuck were terrified. You/Purpleander responded. I worked for one summer at a NASCAR speed park, and it was probably the craziest summer of my life. So many injuries, but nothing ever happening. When working the go-kart tracks, if there was a wreck, you were expected to run across the tracks dodging cars and unlodge the stuck car, all before more cars zoomed past. The worst day though was on the 4th of July, watching a man have a heart attack because I was the first person to get to the car when it stopped and had to wait with him until an ambulance showed up. You/KC_wandering_fool responded. Finally, one I can answer. I was working in an amusement park as a 19-year-old and was on the turnstile talking with guests and checking everyone off. About 3 in the afternoon, a very young girl, about 6 or so, came up with her father, both in swimwear. Not unusual, since there's a water park attached to the regular park. However, there's a rule in the park that you have to be wearing a shirt to ride the ride, and the girl was in a 2-piece suit. I informed the both of them that the girl needed a shirt, and we would be happy to save their spot in line if she had a shirt she could run and grab. Her father raised his voice and loudly asked why I was looking at his little girl, and shouted about me being a pedophile. I backed off and told him he misunderstood, but he kept shouting back to the line behind him about how I was a sicko, and only stopped when park security arrived a few minutes later. One of 2 times I felt like I was actually in danger. The dude was furious. You/TonySnark81 responded. I used to be an operations lead on the Jurassic Park ride at Universal Studios Hollywood. One day, I'm working the dispatch board, JP3, sitting in the operations booth when a phone rings. The lead manning the cameras answers, then suddenly slams the emergency stop button, shutting the entire ride down. We'd stopped for a moment so we could offload a disabled guest, and some brain surgeon was annoyed at the delay, so he lifted his kid out of the boat and sent him to call the booth from the emergency phone right next to the Jeep drop effect, which back then was still functional. If we hadn't been shut down, the kid very well could have been killed. We evacuated the ride, and stayed down for 5 hours because we couldn't get the water pumps back up and running. Dad and family were escorted from the park sans refund, though they pitched a fit. Another time, we had a couple of kids running around assaulting the costumed characters, and then taking off. We had rough descriptions, and I just happened to be at the front entrance while a character was walking around. I saw one of them making a running approach on the mascot, and threw a nasty block into him as he tried to pass me. He went down hard, and stayed down when another escort dropped on top of him. He and his buddy were arrested, and I got a nice bonus for stopping them. You/Neuro_gal responded. I worked retail with a guy who'd worked summers at an amusement park in the Midwest. He'd been the ride operator for a fairly small, tame roller coaster. The previous summer, a high school kid had gone on it with some friends, and been unconscious when the ride stopped. My co-worker called for the medics and performed CPR until they got there. The kid was DOA at the hospital. My co-worker said he still beat himself up about it sometimes. I told him not to. The incident had made the paper in my hometown because the kid who died was getting ready to go to my former high school. And it was well known that most of his siblings had died young. He was something like the 5th of 6 or 4th of 5 to die before the age of 25, from a congenital heart defect. The last sibling didn't have it. That warning on roller coasters about don't ride if you have a heart condition. Yeah, they mean it. The kid died, and the guy I worked with had to live with the aftermath of it. The family tried to sue him in the park. It didn't go anywhere once he told the lawyers the kid knew he had a heart defect and shouldn't have been on the ride in the first place. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Please like and subscribe for more videos like this one.